All right, this will be a kind of quick react and adding onto conversation from a video called Left is Right, Up is Down. The Overton window has been shattered by a channel called Dad Saves America. Link in the description for the video. Go ahead and give a full watch. Watch the whole thing. And if you like it, do the whole same old thing right here. It's an overall pretty good explanation. There's a few things I'd like to add to it, though. So here we go. Let's get into it.
Left and right. Where did this come from? Why do these directions align the way they do? How did this get popular? Well, it all goes back to the French Revolution.
Very true. Very, very true. Can confirm.
And basically, those sitting on the right of the General Assembly were in favor of essentially the status quo, of tradition, of the existing hierarchies, including the role of the clergy, the monarchy. They didn't want radical change. They were traditionalists. They were in power as well, in a sense. Seated to the left, the lesser position, seated to the right hand is considered the more honored position, were those that wanted radical change, the ones that wanted to see a more egalitarian society emerge. And I think this cartoon from the time speaks to that. These are the three estates. The guy on the bottom.
Now, one thing I'd like to add, it's not just the egalitarian part that is kind of fundamental to the left. And this is the French Revolution, proto-communists or liberals, right? They're the communists before Karl Marx and before the Bolsheviks. But these are all kind of have the same kind of theme. It's not just egalitarian, but they're also anti-religion. They're against the right? They're against tradition, and they always have been against religion. They want to destroy Christianity or whatever religion there, right? They always do this every time in China, Soviet Union. So that's another thing I'd like to add that he kind of left out.
Bottom is the common person, and resting atop are the aristocrats and the clerics, who are riding the common man to their benefit and his detriment. And so out of that comes the French Revolution. The thing that's so interesting about the French Revolution is that its rallying cry sounds quite American. And
yeah, he does go into detail here, the differences between French and American revolutions. And it's interesting stuff, but that's not exactly what I want to also add to, because let's see here. Here it is. He goes back to the same picture right here. And there's
a working stiff that voted for Donald Trump. This. When you look at this picture of the three estates in France, the guy on the bottom is a working stiff that voted for Donald Trump. And atop him is the new clerics, which are the media and academic elite.
Yeah, those are all very good observations. I'll let him continue.
And the corporate aristocrats that live in blue states and vote reliably for the Democrats. That's what is so weird about our politics today, and why it's so hard to think about left and right in ways that are remotely historically coherent. For me, I don't.
And I'd like to answer this guy's question and help explain that. And it still makes sense, but you need to add a little bit more kind of context to what's ultimately behind, I guess, the modus operandi of the left, right? Like I said earlier, they're rebelling against religion. They're rebelling against God. They're rebelling against reality. And the reason for this, even when they're in power, they still view themselves as the resistance. When the Soviets already had the revolution, they were in control, they would label enemies counter-revolutionary. And they always frame themselves as the underdog. They're the resistance. Even when the radical left had so much power and control over America, they still viewed themselves as the resistance. Now, why is this? It's because they're not rebelling against man. They're rebelling against God. They're rebelling against nature. They're rebelling against reality, right? So why else would they try to force other people to agree that a man can be a woman, and vice versa? They do not believe in objective truth. They do not believe in objective morality. They do not believe in anything objective. They're against it. They're against God. They're against objectivity. They're against logic. And this is the insanity of it all. And it explains them perfectly in a nutshell when you kind of frame it that way. So they will still view themselves, right, as the underdog, even when they're in power. So a leftist would respond to this like, these working stiffs, right? You might say that these working stiffs who voted for Trump are the underdog. But at the same time, they're going to say, oh, the capitalist class they're all rich, right? Donald Trump and Elon Musk, and they're all, they'll frame it differently. They'll ignore the wealthy billionaire, radical leftists, and they'll say, oh, look, Donald Trump and Elon Musk, the ultimately civil wars and culture and everything pretty much dictated from the top down, kind of always has been that way. So it starts with the elite fighting with each other, really. So that kind of always has been that way. Even when leftists don't realize they're also doing the bidding of the elite, makes it really silly. But that's all I wanted to add. Thank you.